The moment the glass struck the young woman's face, the room fell into a suffocating silence. It wasn't just water that splashed across her cheeks, it was humiliation, cold and merciless, cascading down the white fabric of her uniform in shimmering droplets that caught the midday sunlight pouring through the tall restaurant windows. Celine Hartley, a well-known socialite with wealth etched into every gesture, held the now empty glass inches from the trembling waitress as if her cruelty were a privilege. And for a moment, it looked as though she believed it truly was. The waitress, Leora, blinked rapidly while the chill spread over her skin, her breath caught somewhere between shock and something far more painful, memories she had fought desperately to leave behind. If you are watching this on Ripple of Love, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances. Leora stood frozen, her hands shaking around the tray she had managed not to drop. The scent of fresh roses, lemon-polished floors, and expensive perfumes hovered around her like a cruel contrast to the sting on her cheek. Her coworkers paused across the dining hall, each pretending to be absorbed in tasks but unable to fully look away. Some guests gasped softly. Others pretended not to see, hiding behind menus or the illusion that ignoring cruelty absolved them from being complicit in it. Leora wished she could retreat to the kitchen, or anywhere that didn't have so many eyes on her, but her legs felt anchored to the spot by years of swallowed pride and too many moments just like this, though none had been this public, this degrading, or this shattering. She had grown up in a world where life never offered her gentleness. After losing her mother at 16 and her father just a year later, she stepped into adulthood with grief tucked under one arm and relentless responsibility under the other. She had raised her younger sister through nights without electricity, mornings without breakfast, and seasons where hope felt like an unaffordable luxury. Leora had learned to smile through exhaustion, to stand even when life pushed her to her knees, to believe that small acts of kindness were enough to mend her cracked reality. But moments like this reminded her that the world wasn't always made of kindness, and sometimes it struck harder when it knew you didn't have the power to strike back. Celine's hand remained raised a moment longer, as if savoring the moment. She loved control, loved the attention it drew, loved believing that people beneath her existed only to serve her whims. Her life, despite its glitter, had molded her into a woman hungry for superiority, feeding on validation from people too afraid to challenge her. She had mistaken fear for respect, silence for admiration. And now she stood tall, chin lifted in victorious arrogance, certain no one would dare question her actions, not in a place where her donations and influence held weight greater than conscience. But among the guests sat a man who did not bow to arrogance. Arden Vale, the quiet billionaire owner of the upscale restaurant chain, sat alone at a corner table near the window. His attire was simple, free of the extravagance most expected from someone of his status. His presence went unnoticed more often than not because he carried himself with the humility of someone who remembered hunger, remembered working 3 jobs to survive, remembered sleeping in shelters before his life changed. He had built an empire from nothing, but the shadows of his past kept him grounded, observant, and painfully aware of how the world treated those with no power. He had been watching everything. Leora finally lowered her gaze, feeling the heat of shame burn beneath her skin as she attempted to step backward, to shrink away from the spectacle. But her vision blurred and the room tilted slightly. Too much exhaustion, too many long nights of caring for a sister who still clung to her for stability, too much emotional weight pressing onto her shoulders until she felt the edge of collapse. Her body weakened, and the tray slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering sharply onto the marble floor. Arden rose instantly. He didn't stride across the room with entitlement or anger, he moved with purpose, his calm steps soft yet commanding enough that people instinctively shifted aside. The restaurant sunlight framed him as if the day itself recognized the significance of what was about to happen. Leora, too numb to fully register, blinked up in confusion as Arden approached her. Celine looked at him with an expectant smirk, believing he would reprimand the waitress for dropping the tray or thank her for her presence. But Arden did something that shattered every assumption. He knelt. A billionaire lowered himself onto the polished floor before a drenched, shaking waitress. The sight rippled through the dining hall like a shockwave. Forks paused midair. Conversations halted. Even Celine's painted expression cracked as disbelief broke through her facade. Arden lifted the fallen napkin with quiet reverence, not touching Leora but offering it to her in a gesture so tender, so deeply respectful, that her breath hitched. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she stared, unable to process why a man like him, someone whose name carried more value than entire fortunes, would show her such gentleness. But Arden knew exactly why he knelt. He had once been where she stood, invisible, dismissed, degraded. He understood the kind of pain that lived beneath a person's ribs after years of survival. And he refused to let cruelty reign in a place meant to celebrate the art of living. He stood slowly, meeting Celine's gaze with disappointment rather than fury. His silence carried more weight than raised voices ever could. Celine's lips parted as she tried to regain her dominance, yet the shift in the room's energy made her feel smaller, more exposed than she ever had. Arden calmly instructed the manager to escort Celine and her party from the premises and inform them that she would be permanently banned from all establishments under his name. Gasps followed, shock spiraling through the air as Celine's face crumbled under the realization that her status could not shield her from consequences today. Leora stood frozen, still gripping the napkin like it was a lifeline. Arden turned toward her, his voice low, steady, reassuring without being overbearing. He gave her the rest of the day off with paid leave, but more importantly, he gave her a look that told her she mattered. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a servant, not as someone at the mercy of others, but as a human being with worth. The restaurant slowly resumed motion, though hushed, as if everyone was still processing the gravity of what had happened. Leora walked out into the bright afternoon light, her uniform still damp but her heart slowly warming. Her chest felt tight with emotion she had buried for too long, relief, disbelief, gratitude, and a hope she hadn't let herself feel in years. She leaned against a bench outside, letting the breeze dry her cheek, letting her soul breathe for the first time in a long time. Viewers are kindly asked to comment below before the final emotional moment of this story. What would you have done if you witnessed such a scene in real life? And now, as the sun shifted through the soft clouds, Leora felt something in her begin to uncoil. The hurt did not vanish, nor did the scars fade instantly, but something new had begun to blossom, dignity reclaimed, hope revived, strength reignited. She realized that the world could still surprise her, that there were people who used power not to belittle but to uplift, people whose compassion could pierce through despair like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Arden's single act had become a turning point in her life, an anchor reminding her that she deserved respect, deserved grace, deserved a future brighter than the one she had been fighting merely to survive. She walked away from the restaurant with steps that felt lighter, carrying with her the profound truth that sometimes the most powerful people in the world are the ones who choose to kneel, not in defeat, but in humanity. And in that quiet, life-changing moment, Leora found something she thought she had long lost, the courage to believe again. If this story touched your heart, please support Ripple of Love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your kindness helps keep stories of compassion alive. And so, as the day stretched into evening and the sky washed itself in gold and soft lavender, Leora continued down the sunlit street with renewed purpose. She did not know where life would lead her next, but she knew something with absolute certainty. Dignity could be restored, hope could be reborn, and one unexpected act of kindness could echo through a broken heart like a promise of better days. And as she walked forward, the city around her felt less heavy, the world less cruel, and her own soul infinitely stronger.